Oh yeah. Okay, so let's get into Dallas. I'm so ready now to talk about
Phew,
that stacked roster
I,
that
I
was.
was no shame. I was watching Tattoo Kraus, and I was just like made someone, I don't know who made the point, but it's
Mhm.
like this team, when people say, "Oh yeah, this is Element Mystic," yeah, these guys know each other. They haven't played with each other in probably a
Yeah.
year.
This is
Like
like the
these
alternate
guys
reality
don't have
distortion.
synergy.
They've all been in Element Mystic, but that's a
Mhm.
contenders team, or at least it is that funded organization that is trying to bring people.
Yeah,
And during the
like
different time periods, I would say that's like 3 to 4 generations of Element Mystic that their teams have players have
Yeah.
individually picked up because they're just that amazing. It's not quite the same when you're essentially doing an all stars roster with just one contender,
yep.
which is incredible. It's a great feat, but in practice, I don't think they've had nearly as much time as people to really hash out some really key basics. I've
I
seen last week.
I just think people just shoved unrealistic expectations on them very early. Like, oh, this team's gonna come out. They're gonna start 3-0ing people. Oh, this team's so good. Like, yeah, this is a big wake up call. Like, you can't just slap a group of players that have all like, Fielder, Sparkle, Xe, Hammond. They've all played together, but they haven't played with Doha, Repel, Jexay, and Fearless and forever. Like, none of them have even played with Fearless. Like, and just like it's unrealistic expectations. Like, yeah, this team is very good, so you're gonna be like, this team has to be good. This is the best team Dallas has ever had, and it's unrealistic expectations overall. I just,
100%.
in my
I couldn't agree more. I think I came into this after they announced their roster. I said pretty loudly that this was definitely their best roster and should like see positive results from that. But trying to thrust them into like title contention just because they signed like good players. Don't get me wrong, none of these players are bad by any stretch of the imagination. But is this enough to kind of push them into winning the league? I have a hard time believing that. I think Fearless had a great season last year, but that doesn't mean he's a world class main tank because he played on a team like Shanghai. I think there's a lot more tape that people really need to go over, or a lot more history for people to kind of study before they go, oh, Fearless is a world class main tank. I think he's a great main tank. Don't get me wrong.
I
But to
think
put
top
him at the
three is
top
fair.
is even like,
I would put personally, not biased. I would put Smurf
sure.
over Fearless
Yeah.
because,
Yeah,
but
if they're on
I
the
think Fearless
market.
is good. But I think you could say that with like when it comes to any sport, a player's obviously gonna look very good if they're on a good team.
Yep.
Like I am, is like, what do people think of Lee Jae Gong? Like he looked good throughout the season, but when they started playing like the really, really good teams in the playoffs, he kinda looked like a feeder a little bit.
I mean,
But another glaring weakness is, oh my god, I can't watching Sparkle is just making me really mad. It makes me mad when I
You know
watch
he can
Sparkle.
deliver better, right? He can deliver better results like he did with Xe. And now that he's with
They
Doha, the
we
synergy is
have
different.
no tracer player.
yeah.
None of like these like Xe. You would think, oh, Xe's the hit scam player. You should be like, oh yes, he goes burr, things die. Xe's not that good at tracer. Why do you think Soon was playing tracer for Eternal? It's like, ah, god, did Xe play like only like what one map is Kree? It was like Volskaya. I didn't get to watch the other ones last night because I was
Okay,
very
because
tired.
Last night I haven't sifted through all of them, but they definitely played a lot on Volskaya. They rotated towards it on King's Row as well.
yeah.
Within
Okay.
next. So definitely something in their wheelhouse. But these last few or this most recent match, they've definitely tried. It feels like to get away from it and really kind of force the Tracer Sombra, which feels a little bit more in their wheelhouse. It feels, again, I think the big thing with Dallas is they're probably late to practice, not late to practice, but they're probably on the latter end of teams coming back into actually like getting into practice. I don't think they were necessarily super prepared for this, not the meta, but just getting back into the swing of things where other teams have probably been practicing beforehand. It felt very apparent that like this team was not practiced at all. And that gap between like a couple days ago and last night, there was a difference. It was a little bit more competitive. Again, still a wake up call for Dallas fans to say, hey, look, good team, still gonna beat up on some of these NA teams, but maybe not as dominant as, again, those unfair expectations kind of showing themselves.
Yeah. This is like another take that I've had people criticize me about. I think Rush is a very weird coach. I think he makes very interesting lineup rotations.
And interesting
I started to.
What do you mean?
I noticed. Okay, so back in Grand Finals playoffs, where they were playing against who they're playing, they were playing against Atlanta. Like I don't get why they. I don't get why they didn't decide to put
Just recall what you're talking about, the Paris Eternal, was it? When Rush was there as their coach. Yeah, I believe.
Oh yeah, I accidentally muted my mic. Scuffed me, but it's like when they had it was Sombra Ash, I believe. It's been my memory's a little fuzzy from, but it was that Zarya Hog meta.
Okay.
I don't get why he didn't just decide to play Soon and Exy together, and he tried to force Sparkle onto Sombra. He forced it the whole match, and he never switched him off it. Soon, in my opinion, is the better Sombra.
Yeah, if we're going back
100%. Yeah, I think the difficulty with decisions like that in hindsight is that there are a lot of instances throughout just Overwatch history where that happens, and it's just like, oh, well, if you weren't going to swap, then why would you play this person when you have this person who's just like, again, head and shoulders better, or just from our eye test seems better. I think in that way, you always kind of have to give coaches a little bit of leeway because you really don't know what's going to happen during that match. And if they had any kind of inkling that Sparkle was, the flexibility of Sparkle was needed, if something was to happen, if they wanted to bring out a Pharah, if they wanted to bring out something, a different look that Soon wasn't going to be able to give them, that's where it's like, okay, yeah, it might not be the most potent on the one composition that they ended up showing, but if they had other things prepared, I think that would be where I would kind of end up attacking them, is like, okay, if you were going to play Sparkle and you had the opportunity to swap and show different looks, why didn't we utilize that instead of just saying like, boom, okay, better Sombra plug in, just run that. Like Overwatch, there's also
comms.
Could be. Again, like there's a lot of things that go into this, and I tend not to try and harp on coaches when it comes to lineups because there's a lot of moving pieces that we really don't get to see. So it's I think Rush historically has been fine.
Yeah.
I think he gets way more credit. Well, I think he gets a lot of credit for Paris, where I think it's starting to slowly come out that 9K was kind of in there doing a lot and really coaching that team quite heavily. So I think, again, that needs to be divvied up a little bit more. But again, had a very successful career with Element Mystic, did very well there, worked with these players, knows what he's talking, knows how to talk to these players, which is great. But
that's the problem.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say Rush is like a bottom coach. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, even through his Element Mystic career, like when he played, I'm gonna be really upset that I don't remember who these. It was Alpha. Who's the other main thing?
Alpha Yi.
It's just I remember it was. This is a very long time ago now. He just kept swapping these two in and out, and they just kept playing Ryan. All they did was just keep swapping Alpha wherever the other main tank was. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Was it Takoyaki?
I don't know the names, but I get something here.
I'm like, do you not know which one you want playing Reinhardt?
Oh, it's I think it was the fluid roster mentality that was trying to leech into a couple of teams that could do it. Where if you were a bigger roster at the time, like San Francisco Shock, you had all your players, all the ducks in a row, and you're trying to find that perfect combination. it's even better if you just go, well, no, we don't even need the perfect combination. We just switch out Moth and we can do all kinds of crazy things to try and not stabilize the roster, make it look chaotic as possible. Seoul, with as many players as they had back in Goat's era and with Fissure and Marvel 1,
I think
some good times.
The
Also very
biggest
chaotic.
like culprit of people who I believe genuinely are doing something similar to this is probably Moon on Shanghai. But I think there are a lot of like good intention bricks that are paving the way to like a very questionable decision. Like I agree, on paper it looks very weird, but again, two big things are kind of glossed over when we talk about stuff like this. Is that like we're looking at a contenders team, so we need to be able to show off the talent that we have on our roster, and B, it is a little thicker of a roster. You know, we got some bench players. So to kind of keep them bought into the system, to keep their morale up, at least we got to give them some sort of playtime. So while on paper, it'd just be like, oh, why is Alpha playing? And then why is, Takoyaki, or why is Popo playing? Why is this wishy-washy? There, you kind of have to, it's another one of those moving parts that like, okay, if it's contenders, maybe it's different in Owl. Even in Owl, if you have that big roster, they have to be a part of that roster in some sense. So if it's against a weaker team, maybe you have a rotating main tank. Not something I'm super big on, but if that's going to keep them a little bit more positive, a little bit more bought in, then maybe that's a sacrifice or a choice that these coaches have to make. I really try to defend them and try to fight on their behalf on that, because it's tough. We want the teams to have a lot of flexibility. We want them to have a bench, and then we never want them to kind of like rotate out or change the roster. So it is kind of a give and take.
Yes, unforgiving when you make changes like that.
Like, I may have teams that I dislike. Like, I've never been a fan of Dallas, but I don't like seeing them bad.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it does nobody any good, right?
Like, no one wants. Like, sure, you could be like, you could hate on Vancouver's org, but do you really want to see like that team just do nothing?
Yeah, no, it nobody wants more bad Overwatch. I think that's the
competitive Overwatch.
Yep. We don't need another, Florida Mayhem of 2018. We don't need any more bad teams. We need competitive weeks that we can sell to these fans, build up and have, a real competition at the end of the month and say, look, like, this is the best team. Isn't that sick? Boom. We don't want more bye weeks.
So
I think
there's just I think I might want to try to close this one in on one particular topic as well. The Dallas Fuel versus Seoul Dynasty rivalry. At this point, it feels artificial because these two teams are like so far apart from each other and playing in different regions, which we haven't mentioned. East is now 8 teams, including LA Valiant and Philadelphia Fusion. West pretty much looks the same, but now London Spitfire with a whole European roster coming in, and there is the one other team just on the cusp of forgetting.
Paris?
Just skimming through. Yeah, no, Paris was in NA. But yeah, just this 12 group team. I've got a bookmark here. Dallas, LA, Shark, Titans, Defiant, New York. That's the one. I forgot.
New York
has come back,
the
baby.
New York come back. Yeah. Wait, they came back to NA?
2, 4,
I'm pretty
6.
sure they're Asia, right?
No, they're in Asia. They are in East, yeah. The East and West
Okay.
teams, so I think I must have missed that. It does sound like
it'd be top 5 team.
It'd be disingenuous to say that Philadelphia's on the East, and I've still got my bookmarks not cluttered up. Yeah, that sounds
all right.
fine.
My closing thoughts on Dallas is give them time.
Give them time.
Give them, they're like fresh. They're like little baby ducks. They don't know how to walk yet, but you pray to God that they're not baby ducks for the rest of the season.
I don't think they will be. I think they'll definitely.
I think
by April they'll be good.
I think if they can find if they can just figure out who would be playing Tracer, if they can find a way to just make it work without a Tracer, I think they'll be golden.